Okay, so hello everybody. Thank you for being here for my presentation. And I'm Thomas Prudhomme. I'm a developer at Tranquil IT. As Denis said this morning, I'm a young developer. I'm the same age as the Samba experience event. I'm 25. So let's start the presentation. I will tell you a bit about the story of the project OpenRSAT, and then what is exactly OpenRSAT. I will talk a bit about the language we decided to use, the purpose of the project, and some fun facts at the end. So what is the story? Denis already told it a lot this morning, but at Tranquil IT, we are experts in Active Directory. We are good at setting up Active Directory, migrate Active Directory, and securize Active Directory in a productive environment in different companies, in different institutions, and so on. And at Tranquil IT, we developed also another tool called WAPT, and for some features, we needed to talk with Active Directory directly, so we decided to start looking about how can we integrate, how can we develop something with our language to contact the Active Directory and work with, because we didn't add any LDAP client. So we decided to start a proof of concept of an LDAP client, and Andreas did it at the beginning. And so we start using this proof of concept of an LDAP client to add some functionalities on WAPT. And then another developer at Tranquil IT named Arnaud, who is very good at implementing different protocols, start to implement a complete LDAP client with mORMot tool library. Which is an open source library developed in FreePascal. And so we start to use it a lot with our product to communicate with the Active Directory and do some modification on the Active Directory, and to list information from the Active Directory, because in WAPT we list organizational units and containers from the Active Directory. And so, because we had a good LDAP client that can do a lot of things, we decided to think about what can we do with this client. So we start looking for different tools, and because it is very easy to set up a Samba Active Directory, you need only 10 to 15 minutes to set up an Active Directory. It is very easy to set up a client machine, only 10 to 15 minutes to join the machine to the Active Directory. But when you want to administrate your Active Directory with a GUI tool, you need to spend a few hours just to install small binaries from Microsoft. So sometimes it's a bit long, because you set up all your environment very easy, but it's a bit long to start to work with it. So we decided to start thinking on creating different tools to provide an alternative to those tools with our language and technologies. So we decided to start to work on the OpenRSAT. So it's basically an GUI tool that allows users to administrate the Active Directory. And this tool is available on Windows, but also on Linux and macOS, which is not possible with Microsoft tools. And so the objective is also to provide new features with those tools, because So there is no update from the Microsoft GUI tool to administrate your Active Directory. So there is some features that are missing, and some system administrator want a new feature to be developed on those product. So we wanted to provide a French alternative to Microsoft product to administrate your Active Directory. So now, what is OpenRSAT? You can see it in the name. It's open because it's an open source project. And RSAT is the name used for all the tools from Microsoft. It's for remote server administration tools. So it's like a set of tools that is very useful to administrate your Active Directory. You can create user, manage your DNS, watch and configure all your sites and services. So you can do a lot of things with those tools. And we wanted to create an open source alternative to those GUI tools. So the objective is to provide a lightweight tool. It's very light, and you can use it on each platform, on Linux, on Windows, and on macOS, so you can manage your Active Directory from all your platform. It is portable and self-contained due to the language, so I will talk a bit about it later. It is a bit faster than Microsoft tools, but for some functionality it's not really faster. And it does have only few dependencies. To build, there is only the compiler, the IDE, and the library within the IDE, and the mORMot 2 open source project. And there is only a few dependencies from the system. You only need OpenSSL for the authentication, and GTK2 to draw on Linux application. So this is the authentication page. So there is two ways to authenticate to your Active Directory. You can do a simple authentication or Kerberos authentication. And you can select the domain name and the domain controller you want to connect to, because you don't need to have your computer to be joined to the domain to configure and administrate your Active Directory. You can do it with a machine that is not joined to the domain. And you can also configure a lot of things, such as the TLS. You can tell if your connection is not secure, which means the certificate from the server is not trusted. You can test your connection, type your username and password, and just try if it connects to your Active Directory. So you only need that the Active Directory is available on the network, and you can start administrating it with your account. And I don't know if you are used to work with Windows product to administrate an Active Directory, but it very look like the users and computers tool from Microsoft. But there is there is few differences. The first one is all the modules that are present in OpenRSAT are available in one application. You don't need to start different applications to administrate your Active Directory. So there is a users and computers interface, and as you can see all the containers and organizational units from your Active Directory with all the entries, such as users, computers, and groups. I will show you in a short demo just after. And there is another difference that, as you can see, there is a search bar at the top, and you can just start typing something, and it will search in the World Active Directory the object name you typed. So it's very easy to find the users that you already know the name, but you don't remember where you stored the user in the Active Directory. So there is also the DNS part for the domain name system, and we implement it so you are able to view all the DNS zone in the application, and you can see all the DNS records. So you can view, add, and manage all your records and zone within OpenRSAT. And the third module is site and services, but it is mostly read-only because there is not a lot of feature yet, but we are working on it to provide more and more features with site and services application, site and services module. We focused on those three modules because for system administrators that manage Active Directory as their daily work, they need mostly those three modules to administrate the Active Directory. So we wanted to focus on it so system administrators can work with an open source alternative for their daily work, and they do not need every day to have a Windows machine to just administrate the Active Directory from a Linux or macOS computer. So there is also some different pages within the application. I will show you everything on the demo just after, but there is a search page where you can just type some LDAP filter and do a search on the server and get the result. You can change the directory server, so you can switch between different domain controller. You can see the states of each domain controller if they are online. And you can also change the operation masters from your domain controller, so you can change the schema master, domain naming master, and all the operation masters. There is also pages such as the property page, which is very useful to view and edit information from an LDAP entry. So it very look like the property page from Microsoft Tools. So there is different tabs such as the attribute, security, object, member of, and a lot of different pages to administrate your LDAP entry. And there is another pages, the advanced security settings. I do not have a lot to say about it, but I wanted to show it because it was very hard to create, because it's very painful to understand how does anti-security descriptor work. So I spent a lot of time just to understand how it works and to create at least good interface. But I'm working on it to provide a new interface for this page because it's very complicated to edit and add and delete entry. So now let's talk about Lazarus, which is the IDE I used to develop the application. I don't know if you know Free Pascal, but it's an old language, but we are still working with it because it's very useful to build cross-platform tools. You don't need to adapt your code between how to say it. You don't need to adapt your code to be able to compile on the different platform. Everything works directly. So it's very easy to build new tools available for Windows, macOS, and Linux. It provides also a native UI. It will use Win32 library or GTK2 library or the Cocoa library from Windows, Linux, and macOS. So it provides UIs that users already know because they are used to work on their own machine, so they know the interface. And it provides also self-contained binaries, which is very good because you can just download the binary and start working with OpenRSAT without the need of installing a lot of dependencies before using it. And as I said before, there is only 3 dependencies to manage. So there is only the compiler, the IDE we use, and the mORMot 2 library. So it's very easy to manage the dependency if there is updates to do and so on. The purpose of RSAT is not to fully replace Microsoft RSAT. As I said, we are focused on only 3 modules, the users and computers modules, the DNS module, and the site and services modules, because we don't want to fully replace those tools. They work very well for what they are intended to do. But we want to provide an open source alternative for system administrators that want to administrate the Active Directory without the need of a Windows machine if they have a full set of desktop Linux in their company or institution. And we wanted to remove the need of a machine that is joined to the domain because today, if you want to administrate your Active Directory, you need to have a machine that is joined to the domain to connect with the tools from Microsoft to administrate it. So now with OpenRSAT, you don't need to have a machine that is joined to the domain. So another advantage is that you can administrate 2 different domains with the same machine because you don't need to join both domains to start using it. And you can manage your Active Directory from a Linux or macOS, which is not with a GUI tool, which is not possible yet, I think. I don't know any other tools that do these things, that allow to manage your Active Directory. So I will do a short demonstration of OpenRSAT. So as you can see, I'm connected on a Linux machine. So there is some profile. I didn't talk about it, but you can create different profiles, so you can easily switch between different domain controller or different domains. So you can configure all your domains in a profile, and you can easily switch between profiles and connect and start managing your Active Directory. So you can just test your connection. It will say that I do not recognize the certificate, but the connection can be established. I can select if I want to use a Kerberos or a simple authentication, and I can test the authentication, and there is an error. Yes. Yeah, it works. So the authentication succeeded, so you can try your password to be sure if you are typing the good password. Okay, then you can just select the profile you want to use, type your password without any fault. And as you can see, it does look like the users and computers page from the Microsoft tools, and you can start to navigate through your object in your Active Directory. As you can see, there is also a checkbox just here that allows to list all the entry from the Active Directory without doing it one level by one level. You can just see all the entry in one query. And so you can just type something and it will search for something. So I created a Samba user, Samba group, and a laptop Samba for the demonstration. And you can open the property page, and you can start administrate your account if you want to unlock the account or set up different options. If you want to manage the member relation to this user, you can just click on add and provide a new group to this user. You can see also all the attributes that has values. You can edit those values if you want to edit the attributes of your user. You can see within the advanced page that there is all the ACE entry in this page. So you can manage if you want to add an ACE, which is an access control entry from the security descriptor, and you can manage all the security information of an entry within this page. There is some features that is also not available on the Microsoft tools. On the computer, you can prepare a djoin file. So it is very easy to get a djoin file to offline join a domain with a computer. So you don't need to type your username and your password on the new client machine that you want to that you wanted to join the domain. So there is as it was said in the previous presentation, like there is no password on the wire, so it's very important to. It's a good feature for system administrators to join new machine to the domain. But you can create a new user, new group. You can do a lot of things that is already available from the Microsoft tools, and it works well. So you can start to switch and start using OpenRSAT. You can see you can see all domain zone. So there is an OpenRSAT zone, and you can view all the records within this zone. You can create new records. You can manage already existing records and so on. So there is no new features compared to Microsoft tools for the DNS part. It is at least similar to the Microsoft one, so it is a good alternative, but it does not yet provide a new good feature. But we expect to provide new good features on these modules. And as I said, there is a sites and services module, so you can just start going through object and view all your server and sites that are configured on your Active Directory. And by default, there is a difference between in Microsoft tools, you need to click on the view and allow advanced feature to see everything from your Active Directory, which is by default activated. So you do not need to activate advanced feature to start managing fully your Active Directory. Because I didn't see any system administrator that does not activate this feature to start administrate their Active Directory. And so that's all for the demonstration. Okay, can I go through? So now I will talk a bit about some different fun facts I found while I was working on this project. It is related to Samba Active Directory, but not directly to OpenRSAT. The first one is about the sorted containers. As you can see on the Microsoft Active Directory, all the containers are sorted. As you can see, there is a built-in computers domain controller, which is B, C, D in the alphabetical order. But with the Samba Active Directory, all the entries are not sorted, so there is a difference in this interface. And I'm talking about it because the first time I show OpenRSAT to Johannes, who is in the room, he was confused because the containers were not sorted, and it was a difference between OpenRSAT and RSAT from Microsoft. And I was confused because I didn't expect that there was a difference. And when we take a look at it, we've seen that there is a difference between Microsoft and Samba Active Directory when they give you the result of a query, because Microsoft does sort the entry while you are proceeding the query, but Samba Active Directory does not, so there is a difference. And I'm talking about that because if there is some developers that want to develop this feature, or at least add an option to do it, so system administrators that are used to work with GUI tool, they will have the same comportment, same behavior between Microsoft Active Directory and the Samba Active Directory, and they won't be confused because they are not sorted in the same order. I did a fix on OpenRSAT, so I sort manually all the entries, so there is no difference, but it could be a good feature, so there is no need to sort all the entry on the client to get the same result. The second fun fact concerns DSACLS, which is a tool from Microsoft, because at Tranquil IT we had a short story with it. At some point, at some point, we needed for a client to work with their security descriptor. So we start to look on the tool to manage the security descriptor. And because it was a Microsoft Active Directory, we could not use the Samba tool to administrate the security descriptor. So we decided to look on the DSSCLS tool. And when we start using it on the script, with a script and the domain, it started to be very long to proceed. And it was not possible to let the script run for a few hours within the domain. So we started to think about creating our own tool to manage the security descriptor. So I spent one day to do a proof of concept of a similar tool to manage security descriptor. And then when I tried the tool, I found that I was very fast compared to Microsoft tools. And I didn't understand why at the beginning. So with Denis and Johannes, we start to look on the network to understand why there is this difference between those two tools. And we've seen with DSSCLS that there were like 15 to 20 packets that go between the client and the server. And with my tools, there were only two, one for the authentication and one for the query. And we start to take a look on the packets that go on the network with DSSCLS tools from Microsoft. And the tool tried to resolve each object SIDs that are contained in the security descriptor. So it spent a lot of time to resolve each object SID one by one. And why did I say that? Because with our tool and our script, we didn't expect to get the output. So we just take the text that come from the tool and just redirect it to the trash. So we didn't need the object SID to be resolved, and there were no option to disable the output. So the reason why our script took a lot of time to manage security descriptor was because of the output that we didn't need it for our script. So we found it a bit funny to see that most of the time that is spent by the script to manage the security descriptor was because of the output. So it was 10 times faster at the end by using this DSSCLS, the one we developed at Tranquil IT, than using the DSSCLS from Microsoft. So that's all for this fun fact. And next one, well, not really fun, but it's a fact. For the DNS part and the OpenRSAT tool, I used at the beginning the LDAP client we developed because I was able to get LDAP object and LDAP entry by just using an LDAP connection. But then when I take a look on the DNS console from Microsoft, I found on the network that the tool used this year RPC, and I didn't know anything about this protocol. And I didn't know how to use it with Free Pascal because there were no implementation of this year RPC. So with Denis, we start to contact some developer from Samba to start to understand how does it work and what it does, and how can we start to use this year RPC protocol to communicate with the Active Directory. And it was possible, but the only way to do it was on the only platform on which it worked. It was on Linux because the implementation of the this year RPC of the Samba team is for Samba, so it's only available on Linux. But because the product OpenRSAT is on Windows, Linux, and macOS, I had no way to implement this year RPCs that work similarly on each platform yet. So we decided to start using to continue using the LDAP client to manage the DNS part of the Active Directory. But we found that there is some difference because with the DCR-RPC and the LDAP protocol, there is some difference with the query. Like when you want to modify something on the DNS, it does not the same thing with LDAP protocol than the DCR-RPC. So there were some differences when we start to modify LDAP entry with the LDAP client. It didn't give the same result than using the DCR-RPC. So we decided, because it is a bit easier to do it yet, to continue using the LDAP client, but try to do the same thing that does DCR-RPC, but minorly by modifying multiple times some different objects to have the same behavior than DCR-RPC. So it is a bit hard because I can't just follow what does the protocol, just watch the network to understand what should I implement to do the same thing. I need to look at the Active Directory and what is the difference within the Active Directory to know what I must do with the LDAP protocol to do the same modification than the DCR-RPC. And so that's all for this presentation. You can see the URL of the open source project OpenRSAT, which is developed by Tranquil IT with FreePascal and Lazarus.